happy Halloween and welcome back to White Noise Podcast. Today, instead of talking about a specific film, we're getting real gay with it and we're going to be talking about gay horror or homoeroticism in horror because it's what the three of us here today are really, well, we know best. We're joined here today by the lovely Kaiya, aka It Chapter 2 Oscar campaigner.
Hi.
Just rounding out a trio of gay horror experts. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kaiya. I'm a writer for Obscure Media and other places, and I am an expert in gay horror, especially the It universe.
And of course, we also have Skye here, as usual.
Hello.
Okay, so today we're not gonna be talking about any specific films. We're gonna, like I said, be talking about gay horror. Thought it'd be a great way to celebrate Halloween by talking about kind of the horror subgenre that the three of us know and maybe enjoy the most. So we're going to be covering most likely 80s horror because it's the most camp, in my opinion anyway. And yeah, do either of you have anything you want to say before we kick off?
80s-ish.
80s-ish.
80s-ish. It was definitely the peak of gay horror.
Yeah.
Undeniably.
Yeah, considering all like the synth and the sax, it kind of goes hand in hand, so...
True.
But obviously
like
I'm talking about the Lost Boys.
Yeah. Doing checklists for being gay is what you have to check off.
Synth and sax.
Synth, sax.
Okay, so...
Synth and sax.
So I wanted to start off with like a quote I found, which I thought you two might find like entertaining or interesting. And there's this company called Valancourt Books. They kind of like revive old horror novels, and James Jenkins, who is like a prominent guy in the company, he's really interested in like gay horror and gothic horror, and he's gone on the record before and said that the connection between gay fiction and horror goes all the way back to the gothic novels of the early 1800s, because the traditional explanation for the gay horror connection is that it was impossible for them to write openly about gay themes back then. And I just thought that was like a great way to introduce, you know, talking about why gayness is so prominent in early horror. And
definitely.
Yeah. And Skye, I think you were
wasn't it like,
wanting to talk about this.
I was just going to say, I think, wasn't it also like the LGBT like language didn't even really exist back then. There were no terms to refer to male and male relationships and female relationships or any kind of preference. Well, so it was just like another way to express it.
Yeah, like James Jenkins says as well that like he claims that words like gay and homosexual didn't exist back then, and I call bullshit on that because I'm thinking they did. They just weren't. Yeah, like of course they existed. It's kind of ignorant to just assume that. But
just not mainstream existed.
Exactly. And like Skye, we've talked before about how it was especially a big deal for, say, lesbians, because people just didn't even assume that women could be attracted to other women. So even when even when there was this prominent like subtext of like just homoeroticism in horror in, I don't know, Hays Code era Hollywood, it rarely featured women. It was all men.
People didn't assume that women could have like sexual attraction full stop.
But yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, I think possibly a lot of the time that's why women did gravitate towards each other, because they understood in themselves the attractions and sexual attractions they had that were just being completely oppressed.
Yeah, well, like we see like stuff back in the era we're kind of talking about right now, like say Rebecca and other Hitchcock classics, and they're gay as hell. Like Rebecca, if you watch Rebecca and say it isn't gay, you're just blind. But don't know what the new one's like. As of recording this, I haven't watched it yet.
Neither
so it's gonna be
shit.
Yeah, so did I. I mean,
I really like Rebecca.
No, Rebecca's good, but like when you add Armie Hammer, how good can it be?
Yeah, true.
Very true.
And also, like, I'm worried that, you know, Hitchcock added a lot of the gay subtext to that film, and I don't think Netflix is going to be brave enough to maintain that.
Which is interesting, considering Netflix is all like, sprinkle some gay and it's okay.
I think that now when we see like gay themes in horror, it's very different. It's definitely evolved because it's not so much subtext, it's more like they try to be more on the surface with it. So Kaiya recently reviewed Spiral for Obscure, and that featured main characters who were gay. It's not a it's not a hidden thing. It's like out with it. And not to jump the gun, because we'll probably cover it a bit more in a minute, but one of the main reasons I invited Kaiya to this podcast episode is because of how much they ride for It Chapter 2. And that might be the most gay thing in recent years.
Yeah. It's interesting too because like subtext isn't really that much of a thing anymore. Like the only modern horror film I can think that is like gay subtext is like The Lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else that features gay people that is in the horror genre is like even if it's not that prominent, like they're there, like they still exist.
Yeah, like even if it's a background character now, like they will actively be part of the story. And I know it's great for representation and everything, but something about it almost feels a little less interesting now. I don't know if that's gonna get...
I feel the exact same way.
Thank you. I was wondering if there's gonna be pushback there. But like being able to read into it, usually when it's subtext, it feels much more rich. And most of the films that we have like all like listed that we want to like scream about tonight are, I'd say they're rife with subtext. Some of them more obvious than others. And I think probably the film we're gonna start diving into first, I think I'd say The Lost Boys, and that is the most obvious one, I think, aside from maybe Nightmare 2.
Oh, says the girl that messaged me a few months ago and went, how did I not know The Lost Boys was gay?
Okay, wait. No.
Getting called out.
This is out of context. This is me before finding out that Joel Schumacher was gay. If I had known that, things may have been different. I would have seen it with a different lens.
Coming to your defense, after I just attacked you, when actually I was doing research for this, it does seem to be quite a common thing that people didn't really read into the gay subtext of it. Like some people just be like, oh yeah, it was gay, then move on, and not be like, hold on a minute, what?
It's like, I think a lot of horror films where there's gay subtext, people turn around and are surprised later on, but I don't know. I think I maybe like, I don't know, this one floored me. I don't know why, because now I feel like a fool. Like,
I think with me, it's like I said to you when you sent me the message, all vampire stuff has gay subtext to me.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of it, just because of the intimate act of sharing and drawing blood, that being sired to the person who creates you. So it creates that dominance and submissive dynamic. Which is, again, all in The Lost Boys. Do you know the biggest thing in The Lost Boys for me, that, to be fair, I didn't actually realise until I started watching it with the thought in mind that it was quite a gay film, is that the character of Star, even though I love her, she's so pointless.
No, she 100% is.
Character.
She's
only there to push a straight narrative. Like David could have 100% got Michael without her.
She is there to be eye candy, and I'm not gonna lie, little like bi-curious me was loving it. So I'm not gonna.
She's there. She doesn't need to be.
Yeah, and like I think that's something really great about The Lost Boys, is that like you're like, just get rid of the woman, like, and you're not even mad about it. Like you're like, give me more gay. I want more gay. And like something is what you were saying, Skye, about how like there is something inherently gay about like vampire narratives. Like I agree with you, and I think most people would. And I personally couldn't even tell you how early it was for me. I don't know how young I was when I just like assumed that all vampires were gay, but I do now.
I think it's because of the idea that obviously because vampires aren't human, they surpass kind of the human needs. Like they have their own needs, they have needs that we wouldn't even understand. And I think it comes from the idea that once you reach that level of being, you just don't care anymore.
You just try a little dick.
You're just like, you know what? I'm here for a long time and a good time now.
Is this when we find out that the Cullens had something else going on?
Oh, separate podcast.
Well, separate podcast, just what was happening
Just-
between the Cullen
yeah.
men.
Just to dissect what was going on behind those doors.
Oh my Christ.
It was a long time they were together.
Oh no. I'm trying to think of like other examples like of gay vampires that aren't Interview with a Vampire for a second, because I know Skye's gonna just
Okay.
go absolutely crazy with that one. But like
Jump in.
yeah, like it's just another example actually is that say films like The Lost Boys and Interview with a Vampire, they're really popular amongst like fanfic communities, and like I think everyone knows that most fanfic, I think there's like an actual statistic out there, there's a really high percentage of fanfic is actually gay, so there's clearly
like almost all of it.
99%, let's go with that. You know, they say like Omegaverse, like all that stuff, like that
It's
is
because
99%
all these
gay.
films, all these films, like all the ones we're talking about, and the reason that we're even doing this podcast is because they get to like the threshold of being gay,
Yeah,
but they don't take it all the way. So people are like, all right, I'll do it myself then.
that's true. You could say
That's
like,
very true.
yeah, like vampire stuff, you're like, it's ultimate queer bait, because like they basically look like they're having sex most of the time, like, you know, they're at each other's necks, but most of the time you don't actually see any actual sex, but you almost get that, you know, the excitement as if you did. And yeah,
It's
like,
a very subtle way to get yourself past the Hays Code back in the day.
yeah, exactly. I think I'd mentioned to you both another time about how, say, Dracula's Daughter, that faced a lot of controversy back when it was released, because I think the marketing team or producers, studio execs, one of those random faceless creepy men, like watched the film, and they all said like, we're gonna struggle to get this out there and not cause uproar because it was so obviously gay. Like there's this like one specific scene from it where one woman's like, well, Dracula's daughter, not one woman, Dracula's daughter is coming up to this woman and she's just like, I want to feast on you and like bite your neck and saying all this shit, and she screams and she like falls into her arms, and that would have caused uproar, because think like people were only just adjusting to like the like gay male subtext. Imagine if they'd seen like women in that position. Like we already covered that people didn't even think that women were capable of being gay. Like
that's a film that's an example of like, you can only have a gay character if they're the predator, because like that's because I've actually seen that scene, and it's kind of like, it seems like the vampire is forcing herself upon this woman, but it's more like the woman's like, oh no, I couldn't possibly.
Yeah, it's like against her will. And as much as we're saying we're like fans of gay subtext, you also have to acknowledge that it did do some bad shit too, because as soon as, you know, like we were saying, to get gay characters on screen, most of the time they had to be almost like portrayed as the villains. They had to be like evil and stuff like that to kind of balance it out. And the consequence of that is that the negative stereotypes about gay people were reinforced, and then they became seen on screen always as like predators and stuff. So like I think that might be an important thing to note, is that whilst I am like a warrior for gay subtext, it did also have a bad impact as much as a good one. If, you know what I mean? Like we can look at like say The Lost Boys and stuff and love that, but prior to that it was not necessarily a good thing.
But even The Lost Boys, you have to say that the ending, again, as most things do, the ending is the good, quote unquote, good conquering the evil. And the, you know, Michael, after being turned into the vampire, after arguably confronting his homosexual side, he gets turned back.
You make it almost, it almost sounds explicitly like he had an experimental phase.
Oh no, he did it. If you haven't seen the film, then it will sound like that. But if you haven't seen the film, I don't know why you're here.
Oh my god, no, it does though. Like it, and it's similar to say like Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which is another film we all wanted to talk about. In that, like, you know, they kind of get with a girl in the end. They're kind of this horrifying encounter with a man who is obviously queer coded is it ends with them finding safety in like a woman's arms and stuff. And it, so as much as go ahead, Kaiya.
It's just like when you say it like that, like it really does feel like he had a relationship with a man and then like his parents sent him off to like conversion therapy and then he got with a girl and then everything's fine. Like that's literally what it is basically.
Oh my god. Yeah. It does, it really does. It sounds like, yeah, when you do look at these songs through like an explicitly gay lens, it's impossible to deny it. Like you can't not see it. And has everyone here watched oh my god, how have I forgotten the name? Kaiya, the documentary on Nightmare 2.
Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep, there you go. It just rolls off the tongue.
Like, I have not, unfortunately.
Oh, Skye, you'd love it. Obviously, it's like not. This isn't like new information to you. Like you know this stuff anyway. But so like to everyone listening, I really recommend that documentary. It is. It's about the star of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and how his career in Hollywood just took a complete dive following the film because of.
I did hear about that.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. Like being a horror fan, it's almost impossible not to. But it's heartbreaking to think that the film was read as so gay that it literally destroyed someone's career, despite the fact that it has now developed such an intense cult following for that exact same thing. Like we're talking about it now, you know?
Didn't they come out and be like, "Oh, we didn't know that it was so gay"?
Yeah.
There's a literal gay club in this film.
Yeah.
The director, he was like, I had no intention of it being portrayed like that. Yada yada yada, and he's like saying all this bullshit like he didn't mean to, he had no idea. But then when the film started to be regarded as like queer iconography, then he started like, oh yeah, I did do it intentionally, blah blah blah. And it's like, girl, make up your mind. Did you do it intentionally or not? Like you ruined this poor man's career, but now that the film is highly regarded within like the queer circle, you want to take credit for it.
It's disgusting when you look at it in just the plain facts. Like, oh, okay, I'm gonna make this kind of gay just to make it, like, what is it he even says? He says, oh, I thought the gay element, like the gay angle would make it that bit more horrifying. It'd make it a bit more interesting.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's like he was just using
That's
it.
ridiculous.
Yeah, he basically used it to his own advantage, and he admits it. But the great thing is that although he's turned around and like been a complete dick about it, the film doesn't even really belong to him anymore. It belongs to like all the gay fans that love it for those reasons. And like I'm pretty sure that I'm trying to think of what he says. The star even says that like, well, because this is what my brain's melting. What I wanted to mention is the fact that the star actually is a gay man. Like that's one of the most heartbreaking things, is he didn't just lose his career, he was nearly outed in an era of like utter panic, because I think he said that it aligned almost perfectly with the AIDS like crisis, didn't it? So he
era,
like perfectly.
Yeah, he was literally chased away out of Hollywood pretty much. And the documentary is it's entertaining and it's heartbreaking, but I think if you are also interested in gay horror, it's definitely worth a watch, even if you haven't seen Nightmare 2. It's not going to ruin anything. I mean, it's just a nightmare movie. Like Freddy's going to chase someone around, but it's definitely worth a watch.
The actual you take away the gay subtext from it, and to be fair, it's not a particularly profound film. It's a very just standard nightmare.
Well, that's what's so sick and twisted about the director, is he knew that the gay elements were what made the film what it is, you know? Like, he knew that's what made it worthwhile. He damn well knew what he was doing. He's an absolute asshole. I think he goes in, like, he's a top tier, like, documentary villain, along with the guy from Shirkers.
Oh my god,
I've never thought of documentary villains before.
Oh no, they're real, they're there.
I also think the documentary is just very interesting because it shows like Mark Patton, the star of Nightmare 2, like going to cons and everything, and like all these people telling him like how much that role meant to them growing up. And for this man who thought like this movie was awful and like it ruined his career, for him to now know that it's so important to like
Mm-hmm.
young queer people, and for him to just be able to experience that now, even though it's been so long, it's really like touching to watch.
Yeah, especially when you consider that he said he went so off the grid that he didn't even know about the new love threat. He got tracked down, didn't he, for a different documentary? And
Yeah, so they did
they
a
approached him.
huge documentary about like the whole Nightmare series,
Mm-hmm.
and he had no idea that people now loved the film.
That's I can't even imagine that. Like, imagine like helping a whole generation of young gay people, young queer people, like understand themselves and not even being aware of it. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But an example I wanted to give as well of like the opposite of someone who doesn't want to help the queer community despite contributing to it is fucking, and Skye, don't lose your shit when I bring up her name, but Anne Rice.
Fine.
I
You're right though. You are right.
yeah, she's contributed massively to like the gay community, but she
Mhm.
almost removes herself entirely from it. Have you guys heard of the lawsuits to do with fanfic that she's
Yes.
No, I have
oh
not.
Yeah,
well
she's
so
mental.
she is mental. Well, she's like, I like to think of her as like almost like a prototype Stephanie Meyer, you know, like I'm gonna put out this thing which people are gonna become crazy devoted to, but I'm not gonna let them run with it. You know what I mean? Like she's like, I'm gonna put out one of the gayest novels of all time. And then when the fanfic community become interested and actually devote their time and love to it, I'm gonna tell them shut that shit down.
The best part is, like, so she wrote Interview with Vampire,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was like quite a while afterwards that she wrote the sequel, and the sequel retcons a lot of the original. So to me, it's like she wrote fanfic of her own novel, and then
Mm-hmm.
tells people, nah, you can't take these ideas and make them your own.
Yeah, she got, what was it she had said? She put out a huge public statement, didn't she, saying like, these are my characters, I love them, they're my creation, I don't want you
Like
doing shit with them.
to an extent, I do understand that, because like, I don't want to sound pretentious, but as someone who writes, like, my characters are kind of like
Mm-hmm.
my children, but at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, if someone was to read my work and be
Mm-hmm.
so inspired by it and love it so much that they wanted to create, or it would inspire their own writing and their own art, I would love that.
Yeah, like,
But I suppose the difference is, obviously, at least with her first novel, it was a very deep and personal thing to her, because obviously of why she originally wrote it. So I understand, but I don't. Maybe she doesn't need to be as, drawing up the lawyers for it.
yeah, like, I don't know if it's that, it's hard because it's like, is it that she's homophobic? Because she must be aware of how much of it is heavily gay. I mean, of course it is. Or is it just about that it's her property? Like, we'll never know that because she never explicitly said. But it does make you suspicious almost. Obviously, it's like jumping to conclusions, but why would she become so passionately angry about it? I don't understand why she was so insulted to the point that she was putting out public statements on her website, that she was actually sending her lawyers to send cease and desists and shit to these fanfic
Yeah.
writers who are probably, yeah, it got that bad. She's like, these are probably like 20-year-olds sat around on like blogs and crap, and she's she sent, no, it's bizarre to me. It's insane because like I know so many people that write fanfic and consume fanfic. That's probably because, you know, when you're someone who is like queer or gay or LGBT, you do tend to surround yourself with people who are similar to you. You're gonna like surround yourself with family. And to think that she helped people nurture like a family by finding others similar to them and then turning around and say, actually, you know what, fuck you, I think that's disgusting. No, that's gross. I
It
can't.
is so strange.
It
I'd
is.
like to think that it's because she's a very passionate artist, but that's
Mhm.
just because I don't want.
Yeah.
I just don't want her to be so fiercely homophobic. It's not even I don't want her to be so fiercely homophobic, because at the end of the day, if she is, then cast
Screw
aside.
her, yeah.
It's just because, as you know, you do keep mentioning, and I will keep my fangirling to a limit. I do love the products that have come from her novel. The film,
Yeah.
everything else, the love that people have for it. And to be fair, I don't even love all of the film. There are very problematic elements within the film and novel that I do not like.
Mm-hmm.
Wish we're not in it. But yeah.
It just like, I don't know, like when I forget that there are people who aren't super into like the gay horror community. Like I always forget that you know, I don't know if either of you have ever done this, where you've accidentally joined a bunch of Facebook groups for like horror memes, and a bunch of them in the comments accidentally on purpose, yeah, and there's like people in the comments and stuff saying like, I don't want this gay shit. Like I've literally seen that firsthand, and I don't know about you two, but I really do associate like, say, like the horror community and the LGBT community. Like they just seem like mates to me.
Yep. Yeah.
I think it's just because literally not every, but like a lot of LGBT people that I know are into the horror. Like they're part of the horror and LGBT community. Like again, I don't know if it's just because I am, and therefore I surround myself with like-minded people. But they do just seem to go hand in hand with each other.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's those themes, isn't it? Those underlying themes of just like feeling like an outcast and found family and stuff. Like it's an undercurrent with like both communities, and it's like seeking, like you said, you like purposely go out of your way to find those people. Of course, there's going to be overlap with those communities. So yeah, and I think I can't imagine a world where horror wouldn't be gay. You know, like there is like barely, I can't think of many other genres where you can make such like so many statements with it. I mean, like think in the last like 10 years we've delved into like more like social commentary horror, of course, like that's definitely become more popular and prominent. And I think that obviously, as we all know, like horror reflects like horror of the times, like when these films and books and all are created. And I think that maybe a lot of gay horror popped up specifically in the 80s and 90s, like we're talking about, because of, you know, like bigger fear of the gay community. And if anything, that would have just probably pushed the gay community further into horror's arms, counterintuitively.
It was one of those things that like it gave people more excuses to fear the gay community, but then at the same time it gave the gay community a platform to be portrayed. It was almost like a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
It was like, yeah, okay, you know, we don't really want to be portrayed as the villains, or sometimes even the rebels. Like a lot of the time we just want to be portrayed as everyday people, because we are everyday people. We have our obsessions, we have our passions, but the same as anybody. But it was like, if this is the only way we're going to get it, then I guess we're going to have to embrace it.
Yeah, it's almost like taking scraps, you know? Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that like all the films we've listed so far, I think have been more like subtext, as we said, and we'd mentioned earlier on that as we get closer to like, say, like more contemporary films, as we go through the timeline of gay horror, it becomes more prominent. And I'd brought Kaiya into this. I'd introduced them as being the It Part 2 Oscar campaigner. And I don't know, Kaiya's been quiet for a minute, so I feel like maybe if I bring up the prominent gayness of It Part 2, there might be some thoughts to be shared.
To be fair, even I'm excited to hear this.
This is going to be Kaiya's manifesto.
God.
Not to like throw you in it, but obviously you have like a very deep connection with that film. Do you think it's solely because of the prominent gay relationship, or do you think there's any other part?
That's a very good question. I honestly think it is mostly because of whether it be like subtext or text between Richie and Eddie in the film and the miniseries and the book. But it's also like me and my best friend from university, like we really bonded over that film in 2017. And it's just been like, okay, we get ready to see it. Then we see the second one, and it's just kind of a culmination of our relationship. So it's also that, but mostly the gay shit.
Don't you have a tattoo? I'm pretty sure you do.
I do. I do.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I saw it chapter 2 in September
Mhm.
of last year, and literally 2 weeks after I saw it, I booked a tattoo appointment,
Oh
and
my
I got the
God.
iconic R+E tattooed on my inner elbow, my left arm.
That's
amazing.
brilliant. Like the commitment,
Yeah.
the utter
Oh yeah.
fascination.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my god, that's amazing. I have
I
nothing
love
else to
it.
say.
People were
I
like,
bow
"You're
down
gonna
to you.
regret it. Like, you're never gonna love that film. Like, you're not gonna love it that long." And I'm like, "It's been a year and a half, and I still love it." So
Exactly. And I mean, like, you're literally here on this podcast, mostly been
Mhm.
invited because of your passion for It Chapter 2.
Yeah,
Like, this is what you're
yeah,
known for now. This is your brand.
I know. I
It's
don't know if
so
that's a
good.
good thing or a bad thing at this
No,
point.
it's a brilliant thing. It's a brilliant thing. Like, I mean, your brands are, I would say, It Chapter 2 / gay horror at large, The Social
Mhm.
Network at large, but specifically The Score, and
Yeah,
maybe Annihilation. Like, oh, and
yeah.
X-Men.
I was waiting. I was like, is she really not gonna say X-Men? But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's like those 4 things.
Yeah, and I think like It Chapter 2 might come
Yeah.
out on top from an outsider perspective.
I think it does because a lot of people hate that film. A lot of people hate it. And I will, like, it's a valid point. It's not a good movie. Like, it's quite frankly a mess. Like, it is a mess. But Bill Hader as Richie and James Ransone as Eddie really just make up for all of the mess.
Oh my God. like that's just gonna be like the introduction to your thesis on It Chapter 2. It's a mess. It's a goddamn mess. But yeah.
But
I'm like, I wonder how Kaiya can be so devoted to It Chapter 2. But then I think about like how devoted I am to The Lost Boys, and I can kind of understand it. You know, like
but the Lost Boys is like regarded as being good. Like, people love that film. People do not love this.
There's some like there's just something about like a little bit of gay sprinkled in anything, and it's just like immediately it's like, oh my God, it's so deep and meaningful to me. And like you can know like this is a load of bull, but it's so much. It means so much
for
to me.
sure.
But also talking about like Kaiya brand as well, and obviously gayness. So what did you think of canon gayness in New Mutants?
I thought it was great. That was the best part of the film for me, to be honest. That film as well is a hot mess, but because I have no shame and I can't control myself, I loved it. Like, it's an X-Men film. I'm obviously gonna love it. But I thought the relationship between like Maisie Williams and Blue Hunt's characters, it was the heart of the movie. Like, it was the most authentic part of the movie. Like,
it felt like they could have leaned more into that. For sure. And it yeah, like you say, it was an absolute hot mess of a film.
Hearing all this,
see, the thing is, they can.
Was that Skye?
No, I was just gonna say, it's maybe like, I just want on my gravestone now, hot mess, but she was gay. So.
But like you were saying about they could have leaned more into it, they could do that for like every film with gay people. Like,
I guess that's
that
true.
isn't like a Call Me By Your Name or a Moonlight, you know?
That's true. Yeah, because I guess like we said, like the reason we kind of like these films so much is the subtext nature of a lot of the gay shit. So like if they did lean more into it, maybe we'd hate it. Maybe it'd seem gratuitous, you know? And like there is the argument that it was gratuitous in It Chapter 2, which I know you're going to disagree with.
Yeah.
That's how I felt it was.
The
first time I watched it, I didn't like, I mean, to be fair, I know obviously you're meant to be horrified by it, but the fact that it opened with a gay bashing, I hated it, because I was like, why, again, it was the age old, why is it whenever gay contact is included, it's always in a negative or violent light? But then after actually watching the rest of the film and rewatching it, I did like it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first time I watched it, definitely I was kind of like, and to be fair, I was quite ignorant going into it. I really didn't know a lot about the gay subtext that wasn't it in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was very pandering in the wrong way.
Mm.
And it was only thrown in there because it's like, oh, you know, we've remade this old film that didn't include this, so we're going to include it, but we're really going to punch it in. And I think so after watching it a few more times, it did change my mind, but I will admit initially that's how I felt about it.
I think that's totally valid because, like, the hate crime is in the book, and, like, Stephen King did it because there was a kid in, like, his town that was killed like that. But, like, I remember watching it and I'm like, why did we have to start with this again? Like, but as you watch it, okay, so it's hard because the film is a mess, and I honestly think, like, Andy Muschietti, like, had too much that he wanted to do. But when you think about Richie's arc in that film and, like, the shame that comes with him being gay and, like, the fear he has of it, opening the film with that scene makes sense if you think of Richie being, like, the main character, but he's not.
I think
that is how I thought about it.
Yeah,
it was
like,
almost like it was so separate from the first part. It was like it could be a film standing on its own because they flash back so much that you don't really need to have seen or know the first one. And it did very much feel like, someone going through a very traumatic situation that made them not feel safe enough to come out and be themselves.
It's like, Kaiya, like you said, Andy Muschietti had, like, so much he was trying to do with this film, and as you've both said, like, you do feel like when you first watch it, oh, do we really have to start with this? I think that if Andy Muschietti had been more streamlined and had let the film stand as its own film, you know, like, not do so many flashbacks, that maybe people would have hated that scene less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they would have understood what he's going for in that scene a bit more. But, like, yeah.
Like, I totally agree because there was a lot of people, like, a lot of straight people I know and, like, on the internet being like, Richie being gay doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, that's because you're straight and you didn't watch the first film in, like, with, like, a queer lens.
Exactly.
Like, there's
in my notes I literally wrote down, it's a scene you only get if you're gay.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much, and it's probably just a testament to, like, Jack Dylan Grazer and Finn Wolfhard, like, being best friends during that summer they were shooting. But, like, Pennywise literally uses Eddie to scare the shit out of Richie as kids. Like, he uses him to, like, go into a separate room and then get locked in that room by himself. The missing poster that he's on is totally, like, representative of, like, gay people being beaten and, like, going missing because they were hate crimed and killed. Like, it's like, if you actually sit and think about it, it does make sense, but people don't have brains, so.
But really, it's that, like, straight people don't have brains. They don't have that queer lens. I think I'm definitely, like, after talking to you about it, I definitely am going to watch it again. But there was just something about seeing, like, I don't know, just straight up, like, seeing Xavier Dolan on the screen, I was like, what? This is weird. Like, I've barely seen him act, and, like, to see him, like, act to play a gay man in a film that wasn't one of his felt very, like, I don't know how to describe it, because so much, like, say, gay media that I have consumed, gay characters have been portrayed by straight characters. Personally, I have a lot of complicated thoughts about that as a topic, but let's just say that it was striking to me to finally see, like, a gay man play a gay character, and then suddenly he is murdered in cold blood. I was like, great. But like you say, after like all the things you've said, they make perfect sense. So I think if I watch that again, it's definitely going to take on a different meaning. And not just the things you said, but, like, your passion for it as well and how intensely devoted you are to it. It does make me think, like, the film is worth more than a lot of people gave it credit for.
It totally is. And it's just that whole universe in itself, like, going back to the book, like, Stephen King doesn't know what he's talking about. He says, I never intended for them to be gay. I'm like, well, you were also doing mountains of coke, so you don't know what you were talking about. But within writing that film, he, like, had Richie calling Eddie cute 24/7, had them touching all the time, and, like, Eddie's death is that he, like, dies on, like, I love you, basically. Like, if you weren't going for that, then what are we doing here, bro?
It's just like, how can Stephen King be like, oh, I didn't mean for any gay subtext in a book that he also wrote like that scene into, and you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like that's not the one where he's like, no, I didn't mean it. Like he says that about gay subtext. Like Stephen King's something else.
He says that about most of his stuff. But whenever people say to him, oh, you did this or you did that, he's like, well, I didn't mean to.
The thing is, like, how much can he mean that? There's, to a certain extent, you can be oblivious about themes in your own writing, but at some point you have to be aware, surely.
I also feel like, so for example, in my writing, I can put a gay subtext in without realising it. But then again, I am gay. So it's like, of course I would probably put it in and not realise it, because this is my life.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you put it in and you don't realise it, there might be more going on there than you're allowing yourself to think.
Implying something.
I'm not saying Stephen King explicitly. I'm just saying about, like, a lot of people seem to come out and say, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen, or I didn't, you know, want to include that, or I didn't notice until we were finished. And it was like, really?
Yeah.
Some stuff you can say that too. Like, there are certain themes that pop up, or, you know, fans take a really niche part of it and blow it up a lot more because it means a lot to them. But so many times, like, I've just seen like interviews with directors or read interviews with writers and stuff, and they've just been like, well, I didn't mean it, but, you know, if they want to go, they can run with it. And it's just like, it's become like the basis of your fan base now. How can you still be denying that you didn't intend it?
Yeah, no, I hard agree with that.
That's also interesting too, because, like, speaking about fan base, like, gay teenagers bullied Warner Brothers and Andy Muschietti into making Richie gay in It Chapter 2. Like, they really did that. And, like, they would comment on Andy Muschietti's Instagram, like, do this, make them gay, and he'd be like, I don't understand what you guys are talking about. But they pressured him for like a year and a half, to the point that he just, like, gave in, and he did it.
Yeah, and, like, the thing is, it's not like he wrote a huge storyline. It was small little actions and words and images, and think how much it means to say, like, you. Like, he only had to do those tiny things, and it just gave the film a whole new meaning to a lot of people. I don't understand why more filmmakers don't, like Skye says, like, why they don't just lean into it. Like, it wouldn't be hard. And it just...
No, and it doesn't take much.
Yeah, and it shows, like, some... I'm not saying, like, obviously you have to write representation and stuff for the sake of representation, but if you know that something you're creating definitely is dipping into that area, you almost have, like, a responsibility to, like, pay respect and not just use it, like we said they did with Nightmare 2. You know, like, if Nightmare 2 had kind of addressed maybe that there was some internalized homophobia, that could have been, like, a very smart and clever film. Which it is to an extent, but, you know, the denial of it. The denial of it kind of, you know, it leaves, like, a bad taste in your mouth.
You can't say whilst you're watching it.
What's smart and clever.
Like, yeah, you can say it afterwards when you think about it in the theme, but, like, whilst you're like, I think it's just because it's fresh in my mind from watching it today.
Well,
but, like, when you're watching it, to say that it's clever.
What is it? He's riding at one point, like, a broom around his bedroom.
You're
like, smart and clever.
Clever. But you know what? I did comment on that scene in my notes, because it was like, it was a scene where it's kind of like, okay, this kid's not your stereotypical heterosexual hero.
You can look at all these different films, like, we've all got on our lists, and you can literally, like, you could almost rank them by how gay they are. And yeah, and I am pretty certain that despite the fact that It Part 2 made it canon, Nightmare 2 is still more gay. Like, that's an incredible feat.
I have to agree with that.
I think it's the gayest thing I've ever seen. Like, so say, like, we wrote a big list of, like, films, and we're not going to cover them all here, but some of the films that we made note on maybe don't feature a gay character, or maybe they're just, like, hinted at, something like that. We did, Kaiya kindly pointed out too, which me and Skye hadn't even thought of because we're stupid, and those were Jennifer's Body and Black Swan. And these are obviously more like recent examples, and I think they're the only two films I can think of with gay women prominently featured.
Prominently featured.
I'm gonna go ahead and say Gina Rodriguez in Annihilation.
That's true, actually.
But she's a side character.
Yeah, that's true as well. It's interesting to me that Skye, you are straight up as gay as they come, as you like to call it, gay as they come woman, and you couldn't think of any gay female horror films. That's madness to me.
I really couldn't. I think it's because, and we did speak about this briefly, but it's because the gay horror genre has predominantly focused on men.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, the idea of two women subtly being in a relationship, at least back then, was a lot more difficult to portray, because it was like, two women could be making out on screen and people still wouldn't think that they were gay.
Yeah, it's like they're awfully good friends.
As an example, the other day met my new neighbour, and I was with my partner, and after we had a nice conversation, she was like, "Oh, it's so nice you two are such good friends." And I was like, yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, but that's
we
rough.
weren't hiding it at all, and she was just like, "Oh, you're such lovely friends."
Like, oh yes, no, yeah, like it. But that's an example, I think, of how little gay women are shown on screen. And that, like, you can literally have a gay woman in front of you and be like, "Oh, is that your bestie?" You know, like.
I suppose gay women are like that to other gay women.
Yeah,
like,
that's
they're like, like, "Oh, these two girls, they're such good friends." Like, they're not, but you.
Well, the gaydar just doesn't exist.
The gaydar just doesn't work. It's just
I was going to say personally that, like, say for me, I didn't really see many examples of gay women when I was growing up. And I don't know if that's through lack of looking, probably is. But the most prominent one that I can think of is Jennifer's Body, like one that Kaiya listed. And I don't know about you two, but still to this day, I think it's the one that stuck with me the most. I really do.
I see, for me, it was Willow in Buffy.
Oh, of course. But you were a huge Buffy nerd.
I was, so it couldn't be her. But I think that's the first time I ever saw an out gay woman on screen who was also in a relationship that, to be fair, it had its problematic moments. Again, mainly the way it ended and the fact that, for a while, their relationship on screen went from, you knew they were together, but they were never seen together, to the next scene they were in a bed together. And it really jumped from like 0 to 100. But I think that's the first time, and a prolonged time in my life, where I did see a positive, mostly positive, female openly gay character.
Yeah, like I wasn't on the Buffy train when I was younger, so obviously I can't say it for myself, but from my understanding, Buffy was a huge deal to people, and I think it's really telling that Buffy was a horror show. Not like super horrifying, but
extremely campy horror show.
Well, that makes it fit even better, really, doesn't it? And
I loved it.
Yeah, and consider that, like, say, the Scooby Gang, they're a bunch of outcasts, so it kind of worked perfectly in that story. And it would have drawn that kind of crowd to it. Like, the amount of people that say, like, not just that say Willow's, like, coming into her sexuality helped them out, but also just the amount of women which I hear say that Sarah Michelle Gellar was their first crush.
Yeah.
Like, it is unreal how many gay women go crazy over Sarah Michelle Gellar. She's like a gay icon, I would say, in some ways, whether she meant to be or not.
I mean, it's probably no surprise, but I would obviously be down for doing just an episode on Buffy, because whilst, again, like a lot of stuff, it does have its issues, it subverted so many stereotypical tropes and like in gender and sexuality, in a lot of stuff. And also considering the era it came out as well, like the 90s weren't a particularly turning era if anything, they were quite bland, and like, call me out if I'm wrong.
Oh,
but
I don't
it's
know.
almost kind of like, I feel like it was still piggybacking off the things that had come from the 80s, but it wasn't trying to be the next thing. It kind of, I don't know. Apart from possibly Interview with the Vampire, I can't really think of anything stapled in the 90s horror.
Well, there's The Craft. I know a lot.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, a lot of gay women love The Craft. I feel like maybe the 90s kind of finally realised that gay women exist. Or like maybe the 90s was the birth of gay women. I don't know, one or the other. But like I find like as well, we mentioned in our last episode, Skye, we started to like talk quite a lot about like gothic subcultures. And we were talking about how in Ginger Snaps, like they explore like the outcast and the characters of goths, and of course outcasts and goths is like a whole thing. And the 90s was huge for like goth culture, wasn't it? 80s as well, but 90s I say like birth like how we think of goth now, you know, like grunge goth. And still to this day I don't know about you two, but when I'm scrolling down TikTok, almost my entire algorithm is like grunge goth lesbians, and they're all obsessed with Buffy, and they're all obsessed with The Craft, and they're all obsessed with Jennifer's Body. They're like cherry Twitter girls. And and it's like, it's almost like that was their era. So say the 80s was grand for like representation for like gay men, the 90s was it for women maybe. And I feel like and you two can correct me, but I feel like in the noughties there was kind of a lull in it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know. I would actually agree with that.
Yeah, like I cannot think of any prominent examples. And like I've said a few times now, and then we get into like the, what would you call it, the teens? I don't know what this last decade would be called. Yeah, you get into like the teens, and it's just more prominent. And I just don't think it's as interesting. Aside from say, let me think of an example. Well, I can't even think of one because they're all just so obvious. And I the only one I can think of actually, is It Chapter 2, which we've already spoken about. I think that gay horrors do another moment. Let's put it that way. And I think there's a lot of people coming up now, like Kaiya, who are going to contribute to that for sure. I really do think that the people that grew up on a lot of the stuff we've been talking about are going to be kind of taking stuff from those films and shows and kind of repackaging it, and not regurgitating it, but like how would I explain? Do you both understand where I'm going with this? I feel like I'm rambling, but like I think they're definitely going to take it to a new level and a new direction. And say, for example, we've been talking all about like gay horror. What about when we get more horror which talks about like, say, like the trans community? Like that's going to be something incredible. And I'm, for one, incredibly excited about that. And I want to say to anyone listening, if you have any recommendations, please let us know, because I feel like that's an entire little not subgenre but area maybe of horror which I'm completely oblivious to, and it has to exist, surely, like maybe in a tiny area somewhere, but surely it does.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Yeah. No, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I also am really curious to see where like the genre of gay horror will go now, but there is also a part of me that is scared that it is going to go backwards, and it's going to start portraying the other and gay as the villain, or just not like, I guess it's just because it's topical at the moment, like, and it's not a film. Obviously everybody's talking about The Haunting of Bly Manor at the moment, and the fact that, you know, there was a gay relationship that was a relationship out, and it existed outside of the horror, you know, to an extent. And I wonder if that's more the direction we're going to go. But then I'm wondering if some people are kind of like, oh, it's not enough.
Well, I've seen a lot of people have been excited about it. Like Bly Manor, those girls are all over my Twitter feed.
No,
I don't know about you.
That's what I mean. I love it. Like I thought it was great, because I really enjoyed for once seeing a relationship for, first of all, two women, but that wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a part of the horror. It was just
I might have to
Something-
argue with you there though, because Victoria Pedretti's character. Wait, Kaiya, have you watched Bly Manor?
No, but it's fine. I've been spoiled.
Are you sure? I feel evil.
No, just do it.
Do you
Go
know about
ahead.
the guy that's haunting her?
Kind of.
Okay, I don't know. I don't want to spoil it.
Just do it.
Okay, so
maybe,
but every
maybe
so
she
but-
should mute at this point.
yeah, like maybe you should mute. Have you muted?
No, just go.
Okay, right. So basically, Victoria Pedretti's character is engaged. This is like prior to the events in the show, and so they're engaged to a guy who was their best friend growing up, and she like decides like, I don't want to be married, and he can't understand why, and you're kind of like, I think I can. And he just doesn't understand. He's like, we're best.
That's how I read it.
What?
I read
That you
it,
do?
I read it that he did understand, but what he couldn't understand is why she would do it to him now.
I see. We might be reading that through a gay lens. We don't know.
That's actually
and like I'm not sure if everyone would have read into that straight away, because obviously it like shows more of her being gay later on, but like so basically he dies when they're having like a fallout over the fact that she's ending the engagement, which is because she can't marry a man. So there's like they're arguing in a car, he steps out, there's an accident, and then his ghost haunts her because she's haunted by what she did. And then you could link that to, you know, she might in her traumatized mind think that, oh, if I'd never said anything, he wouldn't have stepped out of the car, you know, like the guilt makes you think certain ways. And
that is true.
Yeah, so I do think her gayness is somewhat linked to the horror.
I would completely agree if it was not for the fact that I actually think, and this is a personal thing, and I'm sure people will disagree with me, if it wasn't the fact that I think him haunting her was kind of pointless. I mean, I could be remembering completely wrong because I've only watched it once at this point, but like, again, if you removed her being haunted, the events still play out very similarly.
Yeah, it's more character based than narrative based.
Yeah.
Like it kind of
which
just
I did like, and I think gave her you know, maybe her reason. Well, it was her reason for being there, because obviously if that hadn't happened and everything, but in a way, I feel like, yeah, again, I guess it's just a personal opinion, to be honest.
No, I get it. Like that, no, but that's the great thing about things like that are less subtle. So obviously it's canon that she's gay, but you know, the idea of her gayness being linked to the horror, that's more subtle. The great thing about that is that you can read into it, like we've done throughout this entire episode. Like there is something to treasure about being able to read into something instead of it being served on a platter. And I think that's what a lot of people enjoy about like homoerotic horror. You know, it's not you have to question it, and that's what I think leads to things like fan fiction, because you're curious and because you're not sure, you become more invested in it. So
you take those aspects and like just blow them up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it's like Kaiya said, like with It Chapter 2, Andy Muschietti was like hounded by fans that like, you can say they read into it or not, like maybe they did, maybe they didn't, maybe it is genuinely there that it is gay. Like of course, like even if they were given the tiniest scrap, they were going to run with it, you know. Like you can't blame people. People go crazy for even the tiniest bit of representation, and that's why I kick myself for sometimes when I see representation being like, yeah, but that's not the right kind. And like, of course you have to have that critical eye, but you can.
It's a personal opinion as well.
Yeah.
Because not every single gay person is the same. It's not like we all have the same experiences, we've all been brought up the same way. So even though we might all see things through a gay lens, it doesn't mean we're seeing it the exact same way. Yeah. Like, and as that example of Bly Manor just gave, you know, the fact that we read those situations differently for whatever reason we did. Yeah. I love it. I love that about these kind of films. I wouldn't want them to be more obvious, and like you say, that might be where it's headed. Not sure how I feel about that. Kaiya, how would you feel about it?
I said this like a couple months ago on Twitter that I'm more of a fan of subtext than actual text. Yeah. And I got hounded a bit
No, you didn't.
I agree.
Yeah, but for me, it's just there's I don't know, the longing that is found in like subtext and like the yearning and the secrecy and everything, because I am not, like, me personally, I'm not out like to anybody other than my close friends and my family. So I can't really relate to like the out and proud stuff, you know? That's why I think Richie's arc in It Chapter 2 touched me so much, because I feel the exact same way that he feels. Like, so I kind of think subtext is more for me.
Yeah.
But I think modern audiences are tired of subtext, and they think that subtext is like weak and there's no courage in it, I guess.
The thing is, it's so fascinating because I can see both sides. Like, I'm inclined to agree with you that I prefer subtext because let's just say, like, with other romances, there's subtext and there's subtlety and there's pining and people love it. Why is it now, why is it now that with gay romance people demand that it be so obvious? Like you say, people are tired of waiting, but being tired of waiting, does that mean that we have to go to an extreme opposite? Like, can't we keep nuance and like have these different kind of portrayals? It's a really interesting thought, and like I love to hear the other side of the argument to us. But if people are just saying they want representation for representation's sake, like how is that interesting or beneficial? But obviously it's beneficial to have representation, but yeah, just straight up representation isn't always great. What, to have representation?
Yeah, because it's like, there's a gay guy in Happy Death Day. Does that count? He says about 10 words in the whole movie. Does that count as representation to people? Like,
that's so true.
Is something like that really worth it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that everyone's going to have different opinions on. And obviously with your background and your experience, they will affect that opinion, like, and no one else can judge your opinion. But it is interesting to see how these people with differing opinions are gonna go on to create their own films and TV shows and how they'll portray gay characters. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. So like you just said, with like Happy Death Day, you just get like a background character who's gay. Like, I can't think of anyone that would watch that film and be like, cool, like, I'm so happy right now. Like, I don't know, like, maybe I know, maybe like some liberals would pat themselves on the back.
That's what I was just gonna say. Like, some white gay liberals would be like, yes, this is a step forward in the horror community. We need more of this. When it's like, it's not doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that sums it up perfectly, pretty much. Like, yeah. Like, I just want to hear from other critics and filmmakers who aren't just like a white gay man, you know? And like, remember Brie Larson got hounded, like, it's come back up like over the last day or two. Brie Larson got hounded for saying we need more diverse critics. Like, we really do, because otherwise how are people going to hear, like, say, like, this criticism you have of like Happy Death Day's random gay character and take it on board if they don't hear from these critics, you know? I'm rambling with these thoughts, but like, I have a lot of thoughts, they're pouring out.
No, you're not rambling though, because it is true. it's true.
Kind of...
I mean, I feel like it's so difficult, especially when it comes to representation, because you can't please everybody, obviously, but this is why I agree, you need a lot more diversity in all aspects, because then there will be things that will appeal to everyone, because there'll be more out there. So I don't think you're rambling at all. You're making some good points.
Thanks. I think Kaiya was making some good points, and I was like, yeah.
No, Kaiya's also made some excellent points. I'm not gonna lie, you have actually really changed my mind on It Chapter 2.
Oh, that's what I love to hear. That's my main mission in life.
God.
Like, you've sold it to me in a way that I wasn't able to see it, because I think also I guess maybe bias when it comes to LGBT representation, that like, I agree, I much prefer subtext. I think for a different reason, like, just for me, I like reading into stuff and I like picking stuff apart, and like I'm sure as Lyanna can back me up, sometimes I read into stuff way too much. But I love it because it's fun. And with that one, to me, it just came across as so obvious. But it was just because I put a barrier up for myself, and I was like, oh, this is obvious. I'm not going to bother looking into it more. But now actually hearing it from somebody who did look into it and did relate to it, it's just made me like, yeah, it's just changed my view on it.
I love to hear that.
I was like one more member in the community.
I've got a feeling I'm not all the way there yet.
Chapter 2 community is dying.
That's gonna be that's gonna be a post to like promote this episode. It's about the It Chapter 2 community is dying, and then like just like images of like Kaiya crying.
Oh yeah, I have some good ones. I have some good ones of me on opening night of that damn movie.
You need to make like one of those like slideshows. You know, they slow mo transition into each other with like music. Those photos are great.
Oh, it's like, oh, it's so pathetic.
It's not pathetic to like genuinely invest in something and love something that means a lot to you, and then get a tattoo like 2 weeks later.
I mean, you've like put my love
It's
for
so
interview
funny
vampire
too,
to shame. I haven't got a tattoo of it.
Nobody else in the theater was crying.
No, are you serious?
And it was me sobbing, like you could hear me, and then my friend was crying a bit, but I was sobbing and everybody was looking at me like I'm a psychopath.
I bet there was someone like 2 rows back, like they definitely gay. So pointing at you.
Yeah.
To be fair, if I had been in that cinema and like heard you crying, I would have been like, do you think I'd be like so jealous? I'd be like, what are they seeing that I'm not? That's such a like amazing connection to make to a film though.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter what it is, I think that's amazing to have that kind of connection to a film.
Skye, I was like stuttering almost, but like Skye, it almost makes you sound like crazy British to be like how to express emotion over a film. Like there's a guy called Louis who writes for Obscure, and he always says in our chats, like me and Kaiya will be like, oh my god, I cried over this film, I cried over that film, and Louis will just be like, you express emotions? I'm British, I can't do that.
It's so funny you say that, because like when I'm like watching stuff with my partner, like she'll turn around to me and she'll be like, how have you not cried? Why are you not crying? And it's like, I don't know why, but I don't cry when I'm with other people. When I'm on my own, I'm a mess. Like anyone that knows me knows that like all my emotions are wired to my tear ducts.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason when I'm with other people, I don't know if it's because I'm overthinking it or because I don't really like crying in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me the other day, like we watched something that was really, really sad, and it did, you know, it hit me in the feels.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't cry.
That's dark.
But like if I'd been on my own, I probably would have sobbed. I mean, I was watching just like a short video essay today on YouTube that made me cry because I was on my own.
Yeah, but that's great
So,
though.
well, yeah, true.
I was thinking the other day, like so anyone who knows me knows I cry over romance. Like I will anything's like vaguely romantic, I will eat that shit up. But I realized the other day, like I've yet to come across a gay film which makes me burst into tears. And is that because like I'm like holding it in, or is it because there's just not enough of them? If you get my drift. Because like I will put on In the Mood for Love and in 5 minutes I'm a mess. Like I'm on the floor crying and I just like I can't breathe. I watch New Girl, I'm crying, and like all these like very het things make me cry my eyes out. But then I watch like Call Me by Your Name and I'm like, cool. Like, and that's it. Like it gets nothing from me.
Really?
Yeah, genuinely.
I can't relate.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, I've seen like a few. Again, I can't think of anything necessarily specifically. Like probably the only one I can think of right at the top of my head is a really obvious one, but like Brokeback Mountain.
Okay, that's the one exception. The one exception.
But no, I think I've come across. Again, it's probably just a personal thing, but yeah, I've come across a few that have made me sob.
Yeah. Well, Moonlight made me cry the first time, like a baby, but then that was kind of it. And I was like, so Kaiya, you know, you said like you'd love like the pining in like gay romance. I want more of those films because you get a lot of pining in like het stuff, like Wong Kar-wai movies. I'm kind of like demanding that from gay films. You know how everyone constantly like raves about it in like Luca Guadagnino's movies, like in Call Me by Your Name, when he's like sniffing his boxers, and I'm like I want that for gay romance movies. Like, I'm putting it out there. Portrait, enjoyed it, but at the end of the day, it's a period drama. You know what I mean? God. And like Ammonite looks boring as fuck. I'm just putting it out there. I don't care if I get killed. Yeah, like I want more like modern, piney, gay women in films. You know, I don't know how we got from like gay horror men to this, but I ain't gonna fight it. So.
All I hear is that Lyanna is making a call out for directors now. Directors, screenwriters,
well, like, this just making me think, like, I'm writing a screenplay and I'm like, maybe I should change this bitch up. Like, maybe it should be women. And that's probably an improvement for the better.
Like, I don't know why. I don't know, just because it's what I've watched growing up or whatever, but it's like, so I've got like two like main current things that I'm writing at the moment. One is male gay, the other is female gay. And the male gay is very angsty. Again, it was written during a different time in my life, but it's very angsty. It's very tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the female one, that one's just the exploration of a new relationship. And I have no intention of, like, there's a bit of pining, but they're both very accepting of who they are. And I don't know why, if the gender made a difference with that. But yeah, I don't know. It might be enough pining for you, I'm not sure.
We'll see. You'll have to put it out into the world and let us judge.
No.
No, definitely. You'll have to. Like, Kaiya, when you write stuff, like, I'm just curious, when you write stuff, what do you gravitate towards? Like, concerning relationships, I mean, obviously.
A lot of, like, hesitancy between the two people. I write a lot about, like, shame and how people deal with that, because that's something I deal with a lot. I don't know. I think that, like, I don't write a lot. Like, most of my screenplays, there's not really a fundamental relationship. Oh, wait, that's a big lie. Now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm lying. So
this is me lying.
There's hesitancy, shame, a lot of, like, one is dead, the other one is trying to cope.
This sounds like an It Chapter 2 review.
When I tell you, I won't spoil anything, but I take a lot of inspiration from that because it really had, like, such an impact on my adult life.
Oh, I love it.
But yeah. But also, I'm putting it out there into the universe. I will make the next rendition of it. I will. I will.
Or wait, do you mean like an entirely new adaptation?
The whole thing. When they reboot it in 30 more years, it's gonna be my name on the screen. It's gonna be me.
Yeah, I'm manifesting this for you.
To be here at this historic moment. I can't wait.
Why 30? Why 30 though? I'm betting you could do it in 20. I'm gonna say 20.
Yeah. You're right.
So hesitant.
It'll be good.
I'll be 40. I'll be in my prime.
That's like the only thing that, like, I'm gonna be an indie darling, but I will sell my soul. I will sell my soul to do it or an X-Men film. I will sell out.
Oh my god, is it gonna be like the film? Oh my god, it's gonna be like your Snowpiercer. Like, some people love it, some people hate it. It's like, I went American. Yep. You have all these like small Canadian films, like, I ventured over the border to do it. When you make Canadian it though, like, it's got to be done. Like, what's like
the Canadian accent?
Thing is, you say this, but to me it sounds so similar. Apart from when you say like oot. Like,
Do they?
yeah,
About.
a boot.
Are we just coming for Kai's accent now, are we? Is
Yeah, of course.
that what this has turned into?
You have to address it, you know, when you've had a whole podcast of like 2 Brits and a Canadian, it has to be addressed at some point.
Yeah.
I
Um,
yeah. I do think now that we've gotten to the point of accent talk that maybe it's time to start wrapping things up.
True, we are starting to go off a bit.
Yes, but this has been a lovely conversation, and I think that we actually did cover a lot of stuff I didn't expect to.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And like, I agree with Skye, Kaiya. You have completely changed my perception of It Chapter 2.
Oh, good.
I might have
I
to
feel
like.
like this has just become Kai's platform to convert 2 people, and it's happened.
Have you seen that meme? That meme where it's like you only need 3 people to start a religion.
Literally. And I
And we're
just did
here.
it.
And you know what? We're going to end this with, we are now looking out to you guys.
Can't wait for your like cult bunker, Kaiya.
It's crazy. I made my mother watch it. I made my grandmother watch it. I made my stepdad watch it. I made my 2 best friends that live in Toronto watched it. Like, I'm unstoppable.
Oh, I love it. You're spreading the word. This
I
is you
know.
spreading gospel. This is great. A missionary, truly.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a great conversation. It was nice to hear from you both about things that I knew you both thought, but also stuff that I hadn't heard you both talk about yet. If that makes sense. Like, and Scott, I thought you were going to go harder for Anne Rice. I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit disappointed
I
in
was.
you.
Maybe if, you know, people really, really want to hear my opinions on Anne Rice and Interview with the Vampire, they can request a mini-sode. Because to be fair, I did have quite a bit written down for it, but then, you know, Kaiya just swept me away. I was so enthralled by what they had to say.
Guys, like, keep the compliments coming.
I'm also like, did I talk too much?
No, of course not. No, it was great to have you on as a guest. It was lovely. It's been very nice to have you here in like virtual company.
It was nice. It was fun.
I think that's it for this episode. If no one else has any further points they want to add about gay horror.
Not unless you want me to go off for another hour.
About Anne Rice. You can hold me to this, Skye. We'll do a mini-sode so you can use up those notes.
Oh, okay, I'm ready for it. I'll do it on my own, I don't care. I'll speak to a wall. I just need to get this out of myself.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds good.
Okay, yeah. Nobody wants it, but I do.
No, they do. The people want it, Skye, and we'll give them it. Really nice to talk to you both about gay horror for about an hour, I think. I think that's what we shot for, so we've done pretty good tonight. But yeah, this was a really nice conversation, and I think that's it for today. So I really still 3 episodes in, don't know how to wrap up episodes. So I think I'm just going to end this by saying Happy Halloween again.
I think
just imagine music fading out. I'll add music and it'll fade out to the sound of me saying this rambly bit. Yeah, it'll be safe.